This topic, I actually first attended this class back in 2018, and I just thought it was excellent. It was actually with Jackie Ellis. Some of you may know of Jackie, top producer within Keller Williams, and uh, cultural icon, and a great example of someone who embodies the culture and shares and gives back in the business. So let's jump into that. So Business by the Book is really around two topics essentially: the One Thing and MREA. If you're not familiar with these publications, you can visit Keller Inc., kellerink.com. This is the publishing arm of Keller Williams, and you can find all of the books that have been published here. So the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, we refer to that as the Red Book, and also the One Thing. We also have the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Shift, Flip and Hold, and there's even some other new resources in here. Your First Home, which is a great gift for your buyers, first-time homeowners, actually walks them through the process of buying their first home, and now available in Spanish, Su Primera Casa. So definitely take a look at those. Su Primera Casa is a great one, obviously bilingual, Spanish-speaking for those people as well. And there are some additional versions of this. There's also a lot of resources on this page, free downloadable resources. So under the One Thing, we're going to look at some of these tables and graphs today, but there's a GPS format, a template, 411, the figures, other references by chapter, and even under MREA, there's some different references there as well. All of the figures, tasks list, economic models, some activities, Big Y, a quiz, book club topics, and even the chart of accounts, which you can download. So this is for your budget model. The other books also have great references. The Shift book has some good references in there, a lot of important figures in there. Shift is obviously very relevant right now, certain tactics within Shift, pricing ahead of the market, creative financing, and keeping the deal together, all relevant in this market. There's some other points in here. Your First Home, again, resources there, the 3L blueprints and some other things. There's also a blog on this page as well. You can learn more about that. This is National Home Ownership Month, so some great topics and discussions in there, some things you might want to read about or share out with your sphere. Hey, Wendy, thanks for joining us. So jumping into this topic on the One Thing. So we're going to actually share the slides and talk through this. So in the One Thing, we're looking at really the journey about where we're going. So we talk about dominoes. Dominoes actually on the cover of the One Thing, and it talks about starting small, right? What's the first thing we could do? The one thing we could do. In this example, we're talking about the dominoes, just the very first one, 2 inches tall. Within a certain number, we can get to the Eiffel Tower. We can get all the way to Everest, and maybe even the moon. But in any event, it takes time, and it takes that first domino to get things rolling in that direction. So what's the one thing we could do? Obviously, building our database, lead generating. We're going to talk more about that. There's also the idea around effort versus results. We talk about the 80-20 rule. This is the Pareto's rule, discovered by a mathematician a long time ago in Italy. Basically says that 20% of your effort will generate about 80% of the results. And you can see this in a lot of different parts of our lives. We're going to talk about it today, where lead generation, that 3 hours a day, that 20% of your day will generate 80% of the results that you're going to have in your business. That's the point there. You'll see it expressed in other ways. If you look, for example, in your closet, you'll notice that you wear 20% of your clothing 80% of your time. Doesn't mean the other 80% of your wardrobe is not important, and I'm sure there's time and events for all of it. And obviously, we're wearing the smaller portion, 20% of it, the majority of the time. Same thing in the kitchen. If you take a look at in your kitchen, your household, all the utensils, pots, dishes, pans that you have, you realize that you're probably cooking and surviving, living on only 20% of the equipment you have in the kitchen. But again, for special occasions, holidays, you need those special tools to make different things. But again, this idea holds up true. It's also been identified through agricultural and other economic models, and it's pretty well known at this point. So, when we think about that, the to-do list versus the success list, long time ago, I renamed my to-do list as my 80% list. In other words, it was intended to remind me that it's not my top 20%. It's the things that are important. Yes, they need to get done, and they're not my top 20%. A lot of them are service activities related to the current business that I have. And what's more important is that I'm focusing on also generating the next amount of business coming in. We all know about the lead gen cycle. We lead generate, we get business, we service the business, stop lead generating, and next thing you know, we have no new business. So we're constantly on that cycle of finding new business, consistently doing that 20% every day, 3 hours every day. It doesn't matter how many to-dos you start with. There's always a way to break it down. You can start with the list you have, go through that, identify what are the top 5 things, the most important things that I need to generate income today, this month, this year, and then boil it down further even into one thing. Again, this idea of multitasking, it doesn't really exist. The correct description is task switching. So what we don't realize in our day is that every time we switch from task to task, we're actually losing momentum, we're losing time, we're losing efficiency. So that primary work, although it might only be 3 hours, could obviously take a lot longer if we're getting interrupted, and unfortunately may also not get done because we continue to let distractions and switching tasks interfere with our primary work. So just an idea there, multitasking doesn't save time, it actually wastes time. And there is nobody out there that's a multitasker. If you say that, I would reconsider it. You're a task switcher. You're switching between tasks. So just think about that. No one's more human than others. This is how we work biologically, and it's how we can get things done. And there's an efficiency to it. We have to be focused on what's the top 20%. Talking about new habits, just this idea that it does take time to form new habits. The role of discipline and achievement, we say it might take up to 66 days to form new habits. We're talking about calendaring today and having a schedule that we're going to be able to follow. The bottom line is once a new behavior takes a habit, it takes less discipline to maintain that habit. So it actually builds and adds momentum as we go. More ideas too, just around the days and times. Throughout the day, we have different energy levels. We start out in the morning, mid we're pretty high, after a break at lunch, again, it tends to fall off, and then late afternoon, end of the day, it's pretty much closing out at that point. But good decisions depend on more than just wisdom and common sense. It takes energy to do that as well. Again, the idea of the rise of the work-life balance, it's a myth. So here's just a quick graphic showing the number of times workable life balance is mentioned in newspaper and magazine articles in recent years. Seems popular. The question is it still accurate? So there's a concept into one thing called work-life in the middle. And it's not work-life balance, but it's actually work-life counterbalance, where there's at times when we actually swing further to the left or to the right, where we put more time into our work, or we have an opportunity to put more time into our life. But either way, we have to focus on it long enough to move it forward to get to the next level. So pursuing a balanced life means never pursuing anything at the extremes. And that's actually contradictory, but it's necessary. Work life at the extremes, this is where bigger things can get accomplished. Maybe you have to set some time aside, in between vacations and family, to actually focus on the work, focus on the business, not just doing work in the business, but actually doing work on the business. We're going to talk about the MREA models today. So pursuing the extremes presents its own sets of problems. Obviously, we spend too much time on one side or the other, we're neglecting the other half. You spend too much time working, you're not paying attention to your family and household needs. And vice versa, there's times when family might become overwhelming, life happens, and work is suffering. But the point is to be consciously aware of our time and what we're doing in between those cycles. Again, counterbalancing, again, it's just shown here in the graph where we are able to swing outside to the extremes and then bring it back to center. Again, extraordinary results at work require longer periods between counterbalancing. So how do we think? Think big, act big, succeed big. Gary Keller told me that a long time ago. Think big, aim high, never give up. So two options here really in our actions and the outcomes. Thinking versus time and effort. Thinking informs actions and actions determine the outcomes. So around our actions, we can think small and we're going to get small outcomes, or we can think big and with the right amount of time and effort, we can get the bigger outcomes. So the question is, how big is your box? What, how, who drives you and motivates you each day? Are you looking for a small outcome? Are you just looking for average results? Or are you looking for something bigger? Is there something bigger driving you? Family needs, personal interests, pursuits, that life by design? What's motivating you? Again, choose your box, choose your outcome. Neither boxes, there's no box right or wrong. It's which box fits you. So looking at the big picture, what's my one thing? So the idea here is, getting a smaller focus around what's my one thing right now. Yes, I'd like to sell 100 homes this year, and I just need to lead generate today for 3 hours. So that's the difference between big picture and small focus. Again, getting small, getting purposeful around the focusing question is a big picture map and a small focus compass. I like that saying. There's an idea in the one thing about the 7 circles. So what's the one thing I can do such by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary in each of these circles. It's a great opportunity and recommended to actually do a self-assessment on each of these, go around each of these circles and just say to yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate that? And you can't pick 7, so it's either 6 or 8. If it's a 6, obviously there's a lot of room for improvement. If it's 8, it may not take much more to get it to a 9 or a 10. But that exercise is very revealing. If you find that you're grading yourself lower in one of these circles, that's probably a key indicator that you need to spend more time. Maybe you've been working harder in the business. Maybe things are a little, counterbalanced, a little bit out of sort, and we got to bring them in. If you're suffering, struggling in one of those areas, it's going to have an impact on the rest of your business. So trying to maintain not necessarily 10 in all these areas, but 8s are good, 7 and 8. If it was 6 and below, I would put some time into it. Again, focusing on the areas that matter most in life. There's an idea around asking great questions in order to achieve extraordinary results. Asking a great question leads to big, specific thoughts. Finding a great answer might require research and role modeling. So this is a two-punch for extraordinary results. And you can break that down further. There's a pie graph here in the one thing. Talks about big and broad versus big and specific, small and broad, small and specific. Same kind of idea here. Certain things will fit into certain categories. Not everything's going to fit into one. And really, you have 4 options here for framing a great question around why you're doing something, what's your motivation, what are your goals, what are your aspirations, what do you want to get out of it. So narrowing that down a little bit further, we talk about GPS and 411s. What can I do annually or monthly? What can I do to double sales in the next 6 months? Well, that's a great question. Other questions could be, and what would be a big, broad, specific answer to that? Again, 4 options for framing a great question. Here's another graphic, again, talking about the possibilities. So the ability to ask great questions versus the ability to find a great answer. At first, most of the easy, low-hanging fruit is doable. Then you might find some stretch goals. Maybe you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone, learn new skills, set time block aside to do those things. And that's the beginning of reaching towards the possibilities. Possibility is thinking beyond what you believe you can conceivably do today. Again, this idea around benchmarking possibilities versus trends. So a benchmark is maybe, it's a frame of reference. Let's say it's what's typically done. It's what on average is done It's what most people find common. And then from that, there's trends, right? There's certain trends that we have. If you do this, you'll be able to get that. And for the most part, those rules of thumb hold true. But when you start to extend yourself into possibilities and stretch yourself, today's success could be tomorrow's possibility. So again, the idea that you're going to have to deviate from the standards from what is comfortable and what you know today in order to stretch into what's possible for tomorrow. And a similar idea here with the iceberg. You know, again, productivity is driven by purpose and priority. So purpose might be the underlying factor, and then it takes priority on top of that. It takes time blocking, time management, skills development, education and learning. All of that will lead to productivity. And what that little bit of that you see above the iceberg there, above the waterline in terms of the overall mass, what you don't see below that is the priority and the purpose and the time and effort that went into creating those results in that level of productivity. Again, in business, profit and productivity also driven by priority and purpose. So on the very top of that iceberg will be profit, but it doesn't come without purpose, priority, and productivity. There's idea around the goal setting to the now. So someday is the one thing I like to do someday. Maybe it's something big and crazy that unlikely not to happen today. Maybe you want to buy an island in the Caribbean. Okay, so what do I have to do? Well, in 5 years, I need to have a certain amount of money saved up in order to put a down payment on the island. But basically, 5 days is what can I do in the next 5 years? And you know, honestly, maybe that's a lot more family, personal driven. Kids going to college, parents downsizing, retiring, assisted living, all kinds of things are going to come up. Investment properties, nonprofits, creating other opportunities for other people, leaving legacies or experiences worth giving. Breaking that down further, we look at what can I do for just this 1 year? What's the one thing I can do this year that's going to add up, roll up to my 5-year, my someday goal? From that, we break it down into our 4-1-1, our monthly goals. You can divide it by 12, or if you want to stretch yourself, divide it by 11 and finish your year before Thanksgiving, and then you can take December off. The weekly goal, based upon the monthly goal, dividing it out by 4 weeks a year. Again, 52 weeks a year, you can push yourself, make it 48 because you're going to take time off for vacation. What do you have to do to to hit your goals within 48 weeks? And then from that, it's just simply dividing it out by the work week, the daily goal, and what's on your daily calendar. Again, the purpose is the future purpose connects to the present priority, and that's the overall idea of the goal setting to the now. So again, here just showing in terms of the dominoes, what's my someday goal, my 1 day, 5-year, 1 year, weekly goal. Again, it all starts with right now, today, what's my one thing right now? So time blocking, so that's really where we're going to start. And make an appointment with yourself and keep it, right? If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. Our typical day for most of us, you know, we look at our one thing, that 20% lead gen, 3 hours a day, that's only 3 out of 24 hours. We fit everything else into that. Unfortunately, everything else dominates our day, and we often lose sight of the one thing, the most important thing. The productive day brings focus back to the one thing. It brings focus back and gets the time of the day it deserves. And that's why we talk a lot of times about doing it first thing in the morning. Admittedly, I don't know how you individually start your days. Most people will start their day in the morning, but if you're an afternoon or an evening person, wherever you're at your highest energy level, where you're going to put the time in to focus on your one thing, that's where it belongs in your calendar. So it may not be first thing in the morning, and it has to be in your calendar. And then everything else has to revolve around that. On my calendar personally, I time block the day with everything I'm supposed to do. And then as I work through it, it's constantly reminding me to stay on course. And then I overlay activities and the work on top of what I'm supposed to be doing. It's a quick example here of a calendar. Again, Monday through Friday, if you're talking about your one thing on those days, that's the 3 hours of lead generation. Some people will take the time on Sunday nights to do their planning, to get their schedule ready for the week ahead. And honestly, vacation time and personal time is something in here. Everybody should have at least one personal day on their calendar where they're going to spend time with family, dedicate time with the family. And Gary Keller always says, plan your vacations ahead of time. So at the beginning of the year, I sit down with actually I've been using the Bold Planner calendar for a couple of years now. And I take the time at the end of the year, during the holidays, before New Year's, to actually sit down, looking at my calendar from last year, knowing what I have. Most of it will repeat again, right? Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, things like that, major events, the conventions, family reunion, mega camp, masterminds, they all tend to recur at the same time. And I have some other personal recurring events throughout the year. I'll sit down around New Year's time and actually plan out my whole year. And it starts with my vacation time. It starts with my time off. And then from there, I'll start to build in the bigger blocks and chunks around that, the other responsibilities I have. From there, then I'll break it down to a monthly basis. And I look at my calendar, I do a week at a glance. So when I open up my planner, I can see the entire week, 7 days, and I have the times and time block there. Now I do a combination. I use the paper planner, and I also very good about my Google Calendar. So I have automated scheduling for my calendar, all links back to my kw.com Gmail calendar, and that's how I largely manage my day-to-day activities, is through that electronic calendar. And I still like to write things down in my planner. I still like to make notes. I still use a pencil with an eraser in my daily planner. At the beginning of the year especially, I'll pencil in everything. Because, unfortunately, sometimes things change. And I will erase if I have to in some instances. But for the most part, by the time I get down to my week, I know what my time block is. I know what I'm set to do. I will do planning at the beginning of the week, like as it shows here, maybe on Sunday night. But certainly every morning I have at least 15 minutes assigned to looking at my calendar, making sure that I'm on track for the day and what I have to do. Again, the one thing, belongs in that time frame. If you're a typical person, between that 8 a.m. and noon time frame, and that's getting everything done. And it's not, when we talk about lead generation in that time, it's not just about making calls for 4 hours. It's the actual setup. It's the actual getting ready to take the action. It's the action itself. And then there's follow-up. So lead generation is prospecting and marketing. It could be getting ready in your database. It could be database scrubbing, who I'm going to call next. It could be making the actual phone calls, then adding notes back into command, setting people up on neighborhood nurture, save buyer searches, whatever the follow-up maintenance, task reminders, next appointments, and all those activities, updating the checklists, of things that may have to be done. That's all part of lead gen. Creating your marketing, social posts, postcards, direct mail. That's all part of lead generation. That can all be done in those first hours. So I just want to remind everybody of that lead generation, those 3 hours involves all of those activities. Again, the X's add up to extraordinary results. So again, along the idea of the 66-day habit, by sticking to your calendar over and over and over again and getting those things done, that's where the results come from. The X's add up to the extraordinary results. When you find yourself, it's hard to be consistent with your calendar, you're going to find inconsistent results. So the more you can stay on your schedule, the more you can protect and preserve that time, the more likely you are to see the results that you intended to come out in your business. Quick idea here about moving from E to P. You might hear that. It's from our 6 personal perspectives. The entrepreneurial approach versus the purposeful approach requires a breakthrough of your natural ceiling of achievement. For a lot of people, unfortunately, their first experience with that ceiling of achievement may result in disappointment. Worst case scenario, it results in resignation. And then we make efforts to try and find greener pastures, move on to something else. But eventually we'll hit that ceiling of achievement again. And some people can fall into the trap of this cycle their entire career, where maybe, every decade, every 10 years, they're changing their major. What if instead we actually maintained our focus for just long enough to develop and implement some of the models? And we're touching on some of those here today. And we're going to get into MREA as well. But even time blocking and these models of the GPS and 411 can help us to break through that ceiling of achievement. It leads to systems and models. That's the leverage that we need to reach breakthroughs. So again, in the long run, The purposeful approach will be the entrepreneurial approach. People jump into this business, they have a lot of energy and excitement. They love real estate. They love the idea of real estate, and now they have to learn how to build the business around that passion. So the entrepreneurial approach may get you into business and activities quickly, but the long-term sustainable approach is the purposeful approach. In terms of accountability, this is probably the biggest opportunity that we have, and in a survey of top producers, it's the #1 thing that they attributed to their success. I'll say it again. Survey of top producers, what they attributed to be their #1 reason for success was accountability, meaning that they had an accountability partner. They had somebody that held them accountable to their goals, whether it was a coach, an admin assistant, maybe a spouse or some kind of partner, but there was someone in their life that was holding them accountable. And that's the idea generally here. Life happens in the middle. We can go in one of two directions. We can seek reality and identify what's happening now. We can acknowledge that this is the way it is. We can own it and decide that it's up to us to change our activities to get the results that we want by finding different solutions, working through that ceiling of achievement, and quite frankly, just getting on and doing it. We start with new agents in the productivity, the PC program, and it's hard. We're going to teach you new habits. You're going to learn new things that you may have never been exposed to before. It's going to push you outside your comfort zone. And at the end of the day, your results in this business are determined by the amount of effort that you put into it. We have leads programs. We have great top producers, educators here teaching a multitude of ways to do business in real estate, not just in sales, investing, other things as well. But it really comes down to the individual. If you don't ask any questions, if you fight the reality of the situation here, if you're blaming others or criticizing others, for you're not achieving your results, I would challenge you to look inside. Personal excuses. There's a bold law where you can have fear or faith. You choose. So if saying it's not your job, how could it? What can you do to improve it? Hope is not a tactic. So if you're waiting and hoping for the business to show up, it's not going to happen. And what's that really all leading to is sort of the cycle of accountability. If you fall out of that, then you're falling into the victim category. So we want to avoid that. We want to bounce back. We want to be resilient to these things. Life happens, yes. If you're having a tough time, talk to somebody in the office. Talk to your PC mentor. Talk to the broker manager, team leader, anybody, MCA, OP. If you're just having trouble with accountability, you're just looking for somebody. Find someone who meshes with you. Find someone whose personality you like. But also find someone who's going to challenge you, right? But have that person of accountability. Maybe it's your spouse, your partner, somebody at home. Let them know what you're working on in real estate. Set up a way for them to be able to hold you accountable. Report your numbers to them weekly. Report to your family what you accomplished this week in real estate. Share that with your family at the dinner table. All of that can be parts of accountability. The other thing, too, is creating a productive, specific environment that can support you. One thing. So we just mentioned family. Your family has to be on board with supporting your efforts in real estate. And it goes back to the 7 circles. If you feel that if you're not spending enough time with family, if you're scoring your family as a 4 out of 10, I would seriously go back and revisit that and see what you can do to improve that, because that home life will have an impact on your business, and vice versa. Your business can have an impact on your home life. So create a productive, specific environment that can support you. One thing. Obviously, the environment as well, the office, the energy level there. We've done a lot of nice renovations here. We have a lead gen lounge here. We've done some other things to create energy in the office and people as well. So look at both of those and how they support your one thing. If you find something's not supporting your one thing, then let's talk about it. If there are issues or concerns at home, possibly, or if you can't get to the office and you're having to work remotely, work off-site, your dual career, there's obviously a lot of different challenges in there. And I would say that you actually have either an advantage or a disadvantage depending on the way you approach this. If you actually approach the one thing with the time that you have, 10, 15 hours a week, and got really purposeful around that time and really looked at what was the highest and best use of your time, you could get very specific and purposeful, and you could generate a decent living and income from this business while working another career. Vice versa, if you only have 10 or 15 hours a week and you're really not purposeful with your time, you're spending your time on busyness, don't confuse that for business. So let's look at that, and let's look at the time that you have available. I work with a lot of agents on that, you know, and then if we're asking great questions, what do they have the capacity to do? And then coaching them, consulting them towards the activities that are going to produce the most results for them. That wraps up the one thing. If there's any questions on that, feel free to raise a hand. But I want to jump into MREA real quick. And this is the second part, obviously, of this class. The Business by the Book is based upon the two books, The One Thing and the MREA. We talked about moving from E to P, breaking through a ceiling of achievement. We also want to talk about listings, leverage, and leads. These are the foundational models of the MREA. And although we get into, again, the foundational models, I want to get into with how a millionaire real estate agent thinks. You'll find this interesting because it actually overlaps with the one thing. The 9 ways a millionaire real estate agent thinks is, number one, they're powered by a big why. That's foundational. Why are they doing this? What are their goals? What do they need to accomplish? What would they like to accomplish? And then from that, taking those big goals, what models do we need to support that? So powered by a big why, powered by thinking big goals and big models. Then there's the 9 different thinking traits. Think possibilities, think action, think without fear, think progress, think competitively and strategically, think standards, and think service. And all of those we can discuss a little bit more detail. Obviously, MREA explores these at length in those chapters. The big why, again, personal growth. I want to be the best that I can be. And then from that exercise, you can go through and fill in the blanks for yourself. These are all taken from MREA. These are the charts and graphs. You can look at this. Again, the idea of, we looked at this as well, around possibilities versus small versus large. So again, how much do you want to make a year? Well, if your habits only are only lower habits, you may only make a certain amount of money a year. And we talk to agents all the time. If they want to be a $20 million producer, you're going to have to adopt the habits of a $20 million producer. The habits of a $20 million producer or $40 million or above look very different than a $2.5 million agent. Now, leaving out units, volume, average home prices, commission, I think you get the idea that around production and time is the same thing as being purposeful around the productivity that we're doing. A couple others here, just again, MREA, we're not going to be able to go through all of this, but again, similar concepts and ideas. The 80-20 rule shows up here again in terms of having that time block each day for the lead gen in the mornings versus the income servicing activities. So income servicing will be taking care of all the leads in the business that you currently have. And really jumping into the systems and models, and that's the most important part of today's discussion, is the 4 fundamental business models of the millionaire real estate agent. So the economic model, the lead gen model, the budget model, and the organizational model. And those are touched on here. There's actually an example of the relationship between these different models. So the economic model focusing on the numbers you need to hit, number of appointments, conversion rates. Conversion rates right now are really interesting. They're not following the industry averages. Yes, it's higher, it's easier to sell a listing right now, and it's a lot harder to find a home for a buyer. But that economic model feeds into our lead gen model. So the economic model is where our business comes from. The lead gen model is how we generate that business, again, through prospecting and marketing. This is the 20%, setting up a database and systematically marketing to it. That's the first thing we tell new agents, and it might take them a month to get their database set up and to go through it and scrub it and clean it up. And it's really your one thing, at least when you're getting started out. Then it should fall into a maintenance cycle where you're constantly maintaining it, but you're always feeding it, communicating with it, and servicing all the leads that come out of that. Focus on seller listings. So again, going back to time management, if you're a dual career, dual agent right now, it's hard to help buyers find homes right now. What if you took the 10 to 15 hours a week and focused on your database for prospecting and marketing for listings? Yes, the listings take longer and they give you back more time, more control of the business versus versus running around a multitude of buyers. And you only have so much time in the week. You can only help so many people. What if we focus that time on prospecting and marketing for listings? The budget model, again, when we first start out, we're solo agents. We have great leverage through the education tools and resources that we have through KW. We do pay a monthly office fee, and that pays for our CRM, our operating platform, Command, including all of our designs, marketing, campaigns, and other lead generation activities, income and lead generation servicing activities. So ultimately, when you do need to hire help, you can look at that organizational model, budget model. Oops, sorry about that. Budget model again, lead with revenue, stick to your budget. A lot of agents are talking to me right now asking about lead aggregators. They're thinking about signing up for things. I even find agents that are signing up for lead aggregators that they don't understand how they work. They're paying high monthly subscription fees, and they're getting mixed results. We know through our relationship with Facebook, the Facebook ads, we can generate leads typically for less than $3 a lead, and that's great to help add to the database. But before you spend money on any lead aggregators, please come talk to us. The company's done a tremendous amount of benchmarking on the lead aggregators. We probably have about 30 on this list right here. All of the details, how they work, the costs associated, referral fees, everything's in there. So be careful with your budgets and what you're spending on right now. Definitely let's have a conversation about that. Ultimately, the organizational model, you're doing everything yourself. Long-term, you can hire help. We do have ways to outsource and leverage help. We have marketing resources in the office, transaction management resources. These are all opportunities for you to outsource and leverage, get back time to focus on lead gen, focus on listings, focus on your dual career, and be able to get the business done. So that's the 4 models of the MREA. It does go on more. You can go deeper into this. They actually do the calculations of what the millionaire real estate agent would look like. Don't get overwhelmed by the numbers. They're just here for those purposes. But there is a lot of, again, the ideas around building up to this. There are more details in MREA. We're not going to be able to get into all that here today. But come back to our business planning clinic classes. We do have business planning clinic at least once a month. Nick Lopez, broker manager, and we've been doing these classes, and they should be coming up again soon. So thanks for joining us here today. Hope you got something out of the Business by the Book. If you don't have copies of these books, the One Thing in MREA, let me know. We have them in the office, and we can give you a complimentary copy. Thanks for joining us today. See you all soon.